Good evening, my dark hearts. Tonight's story is brutal. If you're the sort who checks behind doors at night, you won't after this. Evan thought he understood what he was buying. An old house, some repairs, a quiet start. But then he saw the basement door. 4 boards bolted across it. A word carved into the wood. And a smell coming from the crack at the bottom that shouldn't have been there. He should have walked out. Instead, he went down. Evan didn't think about any of that when he signed the papers. He just saw square footage and escape. A 2-story house on the edge of town, bank-owned, overgrown yard, priced low enough to make the realtor almost embarrassed. It smelled like dust and old water when he first walked through, but it was solid. No mold on the ceiling, no obvious holes in the floor, no neighbors close enough to hear him if he couldn't sleep. After the divorce, that sounded perfect. There was only one thing that bothered him: the basement door. It sat at the end of a narrow hallway, past the kitchen, past a laundry closet with a dead washer. And unlike every other door in the house, this one had been nailed shut. 4 heavy boards bolted across the frame, splotches of paint and something darker on the wood. And above the door, carved directly into the frame, with something sharp, a single word: unfinished. The realtor noticed his staring and cleared her throat. Old owners had, structural issues down there, she said quickly. They boarded it up after some flooding. Liability. Bank says to leave it alone. Evan asked, why not just say, do not enter? She didn't answer that. She just flipped a page on her clipboard and said, you said you wanted a fresh start, right? Somewhere nobody knows you. He signed the contract an hour later. He told himself the basement could wait. The first week was all noise, the hum of the old fridge, the rattle of the furnace, his own footsteps bouncing off the empty rooms as he dragged in boxes and cheap furniture. At night, he slept on a mattress in the living room, too exhausted to think about arranging anything properly. When the house settled, the walls popped and sighed. He told himself it was normal. The only sound that didn't feel normal came from the hallway. Every night, sometime after 2 a.m, he'd wake up with that prickle behind his eyes. The sense that something had changed in the dark. He'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening. The house would be still. And then it would start. A slow, steady thump from the far end of the hall, not loud, not frantic, just rhythmic. Like something heavy shifting, then resting. Thump. Silence. Thump. Silence. It took him 3 nights to figure out where it was coming from. On the 4th night, he got up. The hallway was colder than the rest of the house. His breath smoked faintly in the air, even though the thermostat said 70. The boards under his bare feet felt stiff and reluctant, like they didn't want to be walked on. He followed the sound to the end of the hall. The basement door loomed out of the dark, boards crossed over it like crooked ribs. Dust shimmered in the moonlight from the little window over the washer. The noise was coming from behind that door. Thump. Pause. Thump. Up close, it didn't sound like pipes. It didn't sound like settling. It sounded like breathing. Something pressing against wood and then relaxing. Slow. Patient. Almost thoughtful. Evan stood there with his ear against the cold board and felt it, faint and rhythmic, vibrating the frame. He whispered, "Hello." The sound stopped. Completely. No more thumps, no more vibration. Just the ache of cold air seeping around the frame. The silence hit his eardrum like a hand. He pulled back. He told himself it was the furnace or the water heater or whatever old equipment lived down there. Something knocking around. He went back to bed. He didn't sleep. The next morning, he almost convinced himself he'd imagined the whole thing. The boards looked the same, grey and dead and stubborn. The carved word, unfinished, stared down at him like a joke he didn't get. He was halfway to the kitchen when he stopped. There was a streak on the wall beside the door frame, thin and dark. His handyman brain said, "Rust." His stomach said no. He stepped closer. The streak started at the doorknob, trailed downward in a rough, uneven smear, and ended in a dry flake on the floor. It was the color that bothered him most. Not brown like old rust, not bright red like movie blood. A dull, sick maroon. He reached out before he could stop himself and touched it. The smear crumbled into powder under his finger. He washed his hands for too long after that. He didn't mention it to anyone. There was no one to mention it to. Days passed. He unpacked. He went to work, came home, ate microwave dinners over the sink, kept the TV on longer than necessary, just to drown out the noises he might hear otherwise. The house was greedy for quiet. It swallowed sound greedily. On the 8th night, the thumping started again. This time it wasn't what woke him. He woke to silence, to the kind of stillness that hurt his ears. He only realized the sound had been going on for a while when it stopped. Something about that felt worse. He sat up on the mattress, listening. The shadows from the TV flickered on the ceiling. An infomercial muttered in the corner. No thumps, but he could feel it. The awareness at the end of the hole. The sense that something was waiting. He almost went back to sleep. Instead, because human beings are bad at leaving things alone, he grabbed his phone for a flashlight and went to look. There was something on the floor in front of the basement door. At first, in the dim grey glow, he thought it was a scrap of trash. A leaf, a bit of paper. But when he got closer, his light caught on metal. A scalpel. Not the modern silver kind, but an old one. Long, with a stained handle and a blade nicked along the edge. It lay perfectly centered in front of the door, tip pointing toward him. Evan stared at it. His heartbeat thudded in his throat. No one else had a key to the house. He changed the locks himself. The doors and windows were shut. There was nowhere that thing could have come from, except under the door. He backed away, checked the entire house, every closet, every locked window. Empty. When he came back, the scalpel was still there, waiting. He wrapped it in a towel and shoved it under the bathroom sink. Told himself he'd take it to the dump tomorrow. He didn't. Every time he opened that cabinet, it was the first thing his eyes went to. 2 nights later, he found the photograph. He'd been trying to ignore the basement, sleeping with earbuds in, blasting music. The thumping kept coming and going, sometimes distant, sometimes so close he felt it in his ribs. Then he heard something new. A scratch, not frantic, not random. A slow, deliberate scrap beneath the floor, traveling from the far end of the hall toward his mattress. It stopped directly underneath him. He lay there, muscles locked, breathing as quietly as he could. The scratching didn't resume. Instead, something soft tumbled into the vent by the baseboard. In the morning, he unscrewed the grill and reached inside. His fingers brushed paper, a Polaroid. He blew dust off and held it up. It showed a basement staircase, concrete steps leading into darkness. At the bottom, lit by the camera's flash, stood a figure in a long coat. The coat hung to the floor. The hands were covered in dark gloves. And the head was covered in a rough canvas mask, stitched into shape with black thread, where the eyes should have been. The cloth was sewn shut. Thick X shapes of thread puckered the fabric tight over empty sockets. Yet the tilt of the head, the angle of the shoulders, somehow, impossibly. He was staring directly at the camera anyway. Evan flipped the photo over. A single word was written in shaky ink. Unfinished. He dropped the photo and walked outside, breathing hard. He stayed out there a long time. Sleep got worse. When he did drift off, his dreams were more like intrusions. Flashes of metal, overhead lights, and a faceless figure leaning over him, stitched eyelids quivering as it sniffed the air. He left every light on. Didn't help. The house had corners that collected darkness like water. On the 12th night, he opened the cabinet under the sink. The towel around the scalpel was wet. Not soaked, just slightly damp, as if someone had been holding it. He unwrapped it. The blade was spotless. No nicks, no stains, sharp as a thought. He wrapped it again, set it on the counter. It didn't help. The next day, he found the tape, buried in a box of junk left by the bank. A reel-to-reel recorder, heavy, yellowed. Inside, a tape labeled in blocky letters, post-op instructions for the next family. He told himself not to play it. He plugged it in anyway. The machine groaned. Static filled the room. Then a voice, wet, close, hungry. He doesn't need you alive. A crackle. Just warm. Evan slammed the stop button. Somewhere down the hall, something shifted behind the basement door. He unplugged the recorder. It kept humming for 3 more seconds. Then it died. That night, he slept with the TV blaring and every light on. He still woke up to darkness. The power was out. He knew because the digital clock froze mid-minute. The hum of the fridge stopped. The TV went silent. The house inhaled and didn't exhale. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Coming up the basement stairs. Boards creaked. One, then another. Then, metal on wood. A long, slow scrape traveling along the wall toward his room. Like a dozen scalpels dragging themselves across the plaster. He should have stayed in bed. He didn't. He stood, legs shaking, and walked toward the hall. With every step he took, the scraping stopped. With every step he paused, it resumed, matching his movements like a grotesque echo. By the time he reached the hall, it was silent. Moonlight leaked through the washer window, painting everything the color of bones. The basement door stood at the end. The boards were still there, except they were bowing outward, nails twisting, as if something behind them had been working on them for days. Screws lay on the floor. The word unfinished looked deeper now, wetter, fresh. Something pressed against the door. The wood bulged, relaxed. His hand grabbed the doorknob. It was warm, as if someone had just held it. He tore his hand back. A board cracked, then fell. He ran. He didn't remember fleeing. Didn't remember grabbing his keys or bursting onto the lawn or reaching his car. He remembered turning the key, the engine refusing, and the house staring at him. He must have blacked out. When he woke, the sky was pale. His car door was open, his keys were gone. And in the dew, drag marks led from the car. Back toward the house, back toward the basement door. He woke again at the top of the basement stairs. He didn't remember entering the house. The boards were gone. The door hung open. The smell hit him first. Bleach, rust, sweet rot, something dripping slowly in the dark. He descended. The stairs groaned like ribs underfoot. An old surgical lamp flickered in the center of the room, powered by a jury-rigged car battery. Tarps covered the floor. A surgical chair waited in the middle. Cracked vinyl, rusted restraints, one wrist strap gnawed half through. The walls were covered in hand-drawn diagrams, human anatomy, distorted, twisted, impossible. Tools gleamed on a tray, too clean. He heard breathing, not his. He turned and saw him, the figure from the photograph. The surgeon, long coat stiff with old stains, red gloves slick and cracked, canvas mask pulsing faintly with each breath. And where eyes should have been, tight black stitches, dozens of them, crisscrossing, sealing the sockets shut. Yet Evan felt the man fix on him instantly, as if the surgeon could see the tremor in his breath, as if he could hear the blood rushing through Evan's neck. The surgeon tilted his stitched mask. Bones cracked softly in his neck. Then he moved. Not fast. Deliberate, accurate, unerring. Each step perfectly angled toward Evan's heartbeat. Evan backed up, hit the chair, tried to run. A gloved hand closed on his shoulder. Not crushing dash, just correct. The other hand held a scalpel. The blade trembled, not from uncertainty, but from the surgeon tracking the tiny vibrations of Evan's pulse. The stitched mask leaned close. A whisper came from behind it, moist, rhythmic, almost ritualistic. The scalpel touched his skin. Heat spread. Darkness swallowed him. When he woke, the light wasn't just brighter, it was burning. A surgical lamp blazed inches above him, so hot the air around it shimmered. He tried to turn his head, but his neck refused him. His skin stuck to the cracked vinyl beneath him like it didn't want to let go. His arms wouldn't move. His legs wouldn't move. The leather around his wrists wasn't simply tight. It was biting. Old straps swollen with years of sweat and blood singed into his skin like hungry mouths. Every panicked breath pulled the restraints tighter. He tried to scream. Only a dry rattle came out. Then he saw the walls. The diagrams weren't diagrams anymore. They weren't sketches. They weren't anatomy. They were instructions, pages and pages of him, his body, his features, his scars, all drawn with a precision that made his stomach twist. His chest peeled open like a book, his organs measured, catalogued, improved, and in the margins written in a sharp, frantic hand, Revision 3. Closer this time. Still warm enough. Something moved beside him. Slow, deliberate, listening. A shape eased into the lamp's glow. The surgeon, the stitched eyes faced him straight on. two thick X's of black thread, swollen and puckered over hollow sockets. But the way the head angled, the way the breath caught, the way every muscle stilled. It was obvious he saw Evan anyway. Not with eyes, with everything else. The surgeon leaned forward, the canvas mask brushing the rising heat of the lamp, the stitches glistening as if they'd never fully dried. Evan's heart thrashed. The surgeon paused, tilted his head, listened to it. Every heartbeat made the man lean a little closer. Every tremor in Evan's breath pulled him forward like a magnet. A gloved hand lifted, not suddenly, not violently, slow, reverent, as if beginning a sacred ritual. Metal chimed when he chose a tool. Not the scalpel, something larger, heavier, meant for opening, not cutting. Evan tried to twist away. The leather screamed, the lamp flickered. The surgeon lowered the instrument to his chest. And for the first time, Evan understood. This wasn't an attack. This was the continuation of a procedure that had been waiting for him long before he moved into the house. The surgeon leaned in until the heat of his breath soaked through the canvas mask, until Evan could hear every muffled syllable of the whisper behind it. A whisper shaped like language, but too ruined to be human anymore. Something cold touched his sternum. He didn't know whether it was the tool or the surgeon's hand, until pressure began, and the world shrank to a single, endless moment of helpless, screaming, perfect terror. Be honest. You liked the danger.